You can see why that kind of irritated me. And come to find out that this battle, this war that we're fighting, a lot of it is internal with what they call a deep state. And these guys aren't even part of that organization. So the affronts that we have are many. And I think it brought my attention to something that I didn't know before. And maybe it enlightened you somewhat and to pass it around. Earlier today, I read a town hall article that was "Let None Dare Call It Sedition." And it goes on to explain more of the deep state with the CIA, the FBI, and the Justice Department, and who's working against this or working for this impeachment. And I don't know about you, but I got nobody really asking me for my opinion. I'm along for the ride. But I think there's a great deal of value in knowing the truth. Thank you, Lord, and thank you. And with that, Jim, come on up here and run this show, buddy.
I'll try. One more statement in behalf of what we just seen here brings to mind something I learned real early in the beginnings of the Tea Party. That when our founding fathers came together with the Constitution, I think it was Benjamin Franklin stepped out of the room they were working in and was asked, "What do you have here?" And he turned to the woman and said, "You have a republic if you can keep it." This is if you can keep it. So tonight, we're going to have a speaker, and I want to get a little bit of information as to the knowledge of our membership before I call Mr. Ector to come and speak to us on what they call the red flag laws. How many people understand what is meant by a red flag law? You just raise your hand so I got an idea.
A little bit.
Okay, what does it refer to?
Guns.
And so I hope that gives Mr. Ector a little bit of information how in-depth he needs to go to educate everybody as to how we are being fooled again. You know, we got a lot of people out there who want to take our rights to Second Amendment away. If they can't do it directly, they'll find a roundabout way. In my opinion, this is one of the roundabout ways, one of the touchy-feely ways of who can be against that. Doesn't that sound reasonable? So at that, I'll call Mr. Ector up, and he will be speaking to us on the red flag laws and hopefully get us a little bit more educated tonight.
Good evening. Good evening. How's everyone doing? I know the exact length to keep it away from my mouth so I won't come across as booming. It is indeed my joy and privilege to be before you all today because I get to talk about a topic that means a lot to me. It means everything to me that we have the Second Amendment. And with having the Second Amendment, we have the ability to use our arms, whether they are firearms or some other useful tool to defend ourselves. You know, it wasn't too long ago where our access to arms here in certain areas of the state of Michigan were not very open. The process was not open to everyone to participate. Specifically, it wasn't until 2001 that our state, the state of Michigan, went to a process of issuance of concealed pistol licenses to a process which was uniform across the state. Before 2001, if you wanted to get a concealed pistol license, you had to qualify under a very non-uniform set of standards. For example, some counties, if you merely asked for a concealed pistol license, they would just give it to you. Other counties, the county in which I was born and raised for 52 years, Wayne County, the process was a little more onerous. You had to qualify. You had to be a person of means. You had to be important. You had to occupy a certain job. You had to make certain amount of money. You had to be a person who fit this very narrow band of circumstances which conveniently excluded a lot of people. It was a very devious program that existed. But it wasn't until 2001 in which we went to shall issue. And under shall issue licensing, anyone in the state of Michigan who was at least 21 years of age or older, who took a qualifying class and could pass a background check, the state of Michigan would give you a concealed pistol license. And it was a great day for the state of Michigan because we allowed a greater expansion of individuals to use firearms, to use arms to protect themselves and their families outside of their homes. And that was a great tool because I will concede that prior to 2001, I wasn't, let's just be honest, I wasn't a real huge fan of guns. As a matter of fact, I was part of a generation in which the previous generation who had widely adopted guns with this whole era of progress, you know, with the civil rights movement, a lot of people just stopped giving importance to the Second Amendment as seeing it as being relevant. So around this era, 2001, I'd been working in corporate America for a while. I'd gone to school, graduated from college, and the only gun that I owned was a 12-gauge shotgun. And the only reason why I owned that 12-gauge shotgun was because the elders in my family tree, they sat me down and said, "Hey, Rick, you are a man now. You own a home. You have a family. It is the man's job to protect his home. You need a 12-gauge shotgun." So I went out and bought a 12-gauge shotgun. Didn't learn how to load it, but I had shells in case I had to figure it out one day, just in case someone was trying to barge into my home. And so this process went on until, I don't know, sometime after, maybe a year and a half later, during the time of year reminiscent of today, when it gets dark in the early afternoon, say 5 o'clock or so. I was coming home from work, and as I was pulling my car into the garage, I started looking at all this weird stuff that seemed out of place, and I started putzing around in the garage and putting stuff in various places. And once I was through rearranging things, I walked out of the garage and locked the door, and then to my surprise, there were two individuals I did not know who produced a firearm and pointed at me and announced a robbery. Well, that was a very pivotal moment in my life because it let me know that regardless of how great of a person I am, there are people out there who don't think very highly of me, people who are willing to take whatever I have because they have the means of exacting violence and using a gun to do that. And so in the aftermath of this violent encounter, I had a decision to make. My decision was whether I was going to embrace the option of exploring the Second Amendment and gun rights and gun ownership and see if it was something that could prove useful to me. And that's the great thing that I loved about individuals who cared about the Second Amendment is that they fight for it every day, not only for themselves, but for other individuals who go through an epiphany and who change their minds later. And so as a consequence of being robbed and adopting the Second Amendment and training and becoming a firearms trainer and a gun rights activist here in Metro Detroit, there was a time in which I had a realization. And that realization is that guns is very important and that I need to take a more active role. I need to do more and to contribute and to make sure that the Second Amendment is there for other people. So it was in this path as a gun rights advocate that I received a phone call from a local TV station here in the Detroit area, Fox 2. They're actually based in Southfield. And they were doing an interview with State Representative House Rep Robert Wittenberg. And Robert Wittenberg had came up with this law, this proposed legislation that he was trying to get introduced in the Michigan House. And I had never heard of these so-called extreme risk protection orders, or what some people are referring to as red flag laws. And one of the things that the proponents of these red flag laws or extreme risk protection orders, they try to portray them as a panacea or as a cure-all for the things that ail us as a society. We know that in our society, in our cities, our towns, our counties, and within our state, there's a certain subclass of people who are very violent, who are bad, who are criminals. These are people who think nothing more of robbing and pillaging and victimizing their current fellow citizens for their pure selfishness, laziness, and evil. And they do it with impunity. The one thing that a lot of people are not aware of is that we have had 2 Supreme Court decisions that have made it extremely and abundantly clear as to whose responsibility it is to ensure your safety. These were 2 cases in which individuals were victimized. They were beaten, they were killed. Their families and their heirs wanted someone to answer for the heinous crimes that had been committed against their loved ones. In one case, someone had repeatedly called the police numerous times throughout the night, and the police failed to arrive in a timely fashion. The Supreme Court has made it abundantly clear that yes, someone is responsible for your safety. I will tell you who it is not. It is not the job of the government to protect you. That job, the job of protecting yourself and your family, that is your job. Okay? That is your job. And if you refuse to accept the responsibility for your job, you cannot expect or anticipate any unit of government to come to your aid and to protect you. Yes, we have law enforcement officers at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local level, whose job is to protect and to serve. But that is in a general sense. They do not guarantee that no one will be a crime victim. As a matter of fact, there are people who will villainize the police for whatever reason. As a matter of fact, in the city of Detroit, there was a police officer who was killed the other day. He had approximately 14 or 17 years on the job. He was thought very highly of. And they are in the process of exploring this other police officer who supposedly didn't come to the aid of that police officer when he was being attacked. The bottom line is that you are responsible for your safety. There are police officers allegedly who will not come to the aid of other police officers. Most assuredly, there's probably a few who won't come to your aid when you need assistance. Therefore, I very strongly urge that each and every one of you take on a more active role in your personal protection. With respect to red flag laws, knowing that it is not the job of the government to protect you, they, however, do not want you to protect yourself. For whatever reason, they want you to be wholly dependent on the government for your protection. However, they are not legally authorized or legally responsible for providing it. So, red flag laws. Rick, what is this red flag law business? Last year, I received a call from Fox 2, that's the radio station for the CB, well, it's not the CBS, it's Fox affiliate now. Showing my age now, there's a gray hair, and I remember when the networks were different call signs. But in any case, they wanted me to come down to the Fox 2 studios and listen to what they were talking about. They had State House Rep Robert Wittenberg down at Fox 2, and he was talking about this great new legislation that's been sweeping the country by storm. As a matter of fact, as of this current date today, I looked at the latest stats. There are 17 states plus the District of Columbia, D.C., that have already adopted red flag laws as of August 1st of this year. There are 4 other states that have introduced legislation to explore adopting red flag laws in their state. Unfortunately, of those 4 states that are looking at adopting and implementing red flag laws, Michigan is one of them. Yes, we have elected officials here in this state, Mr. Robert Wittenberg and others, who are desiring to implement red flag laws here in our state. Well, gee, Rick, what is this red flag law business? When I was down at the Fox 2 station, he was being interviewed by the local TV station Fox 2, and they were asking him about red flag laws, and he's like, well, what is this stuff? Tell us about red flag laws. How great is it? And he was basically telling a great story. He was telling stories about there are people in our society who are bad folks who somehow are slipping through the cracks. They are presenting threats to our fellow citizens. However, they have done nothing wrong that rises to the level of law enforcement getting involved. And in this period or this state of uncertainty, when supposedly the law enforcement community can't do anything, these bad guys are killing and seriously hurting people. What these red flag laws, according to Wittenberg, would do would enact or provide an additional tool for law enforcement to keep all of us safe. He said that there's absolutely nothing to worry about, and this is some great legislation. So being a gun rights advocate here in the state, I got a call from Fox 2 to be down there, and they were asking me for my take on this legislation. And I said, well, from what I'm hearing, it sounds great. I've never heard of it before. I said, just offhand, just listening to what you're telling me, my concern is this concept called due process. Due process. Well, some people may not be familiar with what due process is. Due process means is that, in a nutshell, if someone is trying to take away your freedom, if someone is trying to punish you, you have certain rights, rights of due process. You have the right to know who your accuser is. You have the right to know of what things, what evil they are accusing you of. You have the right to prepare a defense. You have a right to a trial and to keep all of your rights until such time a jury of your peers has convicted you of a crime and made you eligible to be punished. Well, with red flag laws, that whole concept of due process is thrown out of the window. Essentially, with red flag laws, anyone, for whatever reason, and you know what? I don't want to waste your time and tell you all of the circumstances or scenarios that exist in our society in which people don't like each other. You know, it'd be great if we all loved each other and we all behaved nicely, but hey, let's face it, sometimes some people don't get along. Maybe I don't like you because you are of a certain political affiliation. Maybe you support, in my opinion, the wrong candidate. Maybe you vote the wrong way. Maybe, just maybe, you're anti-gun, or maybe you're pro-gun. Whatever the reason, I don't like you. I mean, I don't like your Facebook posts. Maybe you said something that offended me. Maybe you posted something about cats and doing something bad to animals. I don't like you. Some things can just be innocuous jokes, and then some people take it the wrong way. in these states in which they have these red flag laws, something as simple as an apparent joke could be taken out of context, and the police can be contacted, and a red flag law proceeding can be initiated. Under this legislation proposed by Robert Wittenberg, someone can make a complaint against you. Gee, Rick, what types of people? This is a literal laundry list of people. I'm going to recite to you the classes of people who can initiate this right-stripping red flag law legislation against you. It could be a parent, son, daughter, brother, sister, grandparent, grandchild, uncle, aunt, first cousin, spouse, ex-spouse, parent of child in common. It could be someone you are dating, someone you used to date, someone who lives in the same household, someone with whom you used to live with in a household. It could be a former household member. It could be a family member. And get this, here's the catch-all phrase. It could be someone who you had a close relationship. In sum total, this is anyone that knows you. There are even people who can initiate a red flag law provision against you who do not know you. And this would be the law enforcement community. It could be a federal law enforcement officer, agent, a police officer, a sheriff, a deputy sheriff, a state police officer, or someone in the federal government. Literally, it could be anyone. So anyone could initiate one of these red flag proceedings against you. They tell this great story. It rises to a certain level of depravity and evil. So they decide to have a secret proceeding without notifying you, and they determine you have guns. You're a bad person. We're going to take your guns. We're going to come to your house at 4 o'clock in the morning during a pre-dawn raid. We're going to kick in your door. And if you resist us thinking that you're suffering a home invasion, we are willing to kill you so that we can take your guns. If they do not kill you during this raid, they will take your guns without due process. You will be considered guilty without the benefit of a trial. If you want your guns back, you will need to file a proceeding with the court at your expense. Get this, they took your property. They deprived you of your Second Amendment right. They deprived you of due process. You are guilty before you have been conducted a trial in which they assessed your guilt or innocence. And now you have to pay to explore getting your property back. And this is the solution. It's a non-solution. Here's the bigger issue. The bigger issue is if they think that you are a danger, then they should explore getting you some help. If you are mentally deficient, if you are evil, if you have something wrong with you. In every state in the union, there is already legislation that exists on the books to have someone who is considered a danger to themselves, to have them involuntarily picked up and held against their will for evaluation for a period of time, generally construed as 48 to 72 hours. And after being held under observation, if you're not deemed to be a threat, you will be released. The focus is on the person. It is not on the person's property. The legislation that is proposed by Robert Wittenberg is to put the focus on your property. If this legislation was to be enacted, They will kick in your door, risk killing you to steal your property, and they will leave you there, even though the implied argument is you are a danger, but they have no qualms whatsoever about not giving you help. They've diagnosed you as being deficient, as dangerous, but they are not giving you help. They just want your guns. That's all it is. It's a naked gun grab. So whenever a politician is ever proposing some legislation, do not assume that everything that they tell you about the laws that they want on the books, that they're exactly what they say they are. You have to actually go to the state legislature's website and look this stuff up. Look these bills up and read them. Trust me, yes, they're not well-written prose. It doesn't rhyme. It doesn't sound good. They use all of these weird terms, but guess what? They define those terms. And yes, it can be rather boring, but that's why we have coffee. Some of you saw me drinking coffee before I came up to the podium, to the microphone today. Drink coffee, read it. You can understand this. In this information age, any information that we desire to learn about is on the internet. Most of you have a device in your possession right now, a cell phone if necessary. Read and look this stuff up, because for whatever reason, there is a group of people who are working very hard and very diligently to take away your guns. I believe I know what that reason is. That reason is they know that whatever their ultimate plan for us, they can't do it if you are armed. The idea, the goal is to disarm you or to make you subject to having your arms taken away from you. Just think, all of you are here in this meeting today. You are all talking about quaint concepts and ideas such as liberty and freedom and justice. But what if your would-be overseers do not want you talking about such things? If you were subject to a red flag order, you could be silenced. You could have your guns and your right to dissent taken away from you. Heaven forbid we be one of those 17 states, along with the District of Columbia, in which the police, for whatever reason, after having determined that you should be subjected to a red flag, should have a pre-dawn raid executed upon your home, and if they don't kill you, they get to take away your guns and dare you to find or raise enough money to try to get your due process, to try to have your day in court.